the work came about because I was in a practice. I was trying to recover my practice. I was trying to get back to art making after taking a significant break. I had to reevaluate why I wanted to make why I wanted to be an artist. But also, I was burnt out a little bit because I felt like I was burning the candle at multiple ends. So generally, being an artist doesn't pay well, so you have to do other work. I was privileged enough that the work I was doing was within the arts already and organizing that aspect, but I was losing a lot of the practice time. So I'd say to build the show and to return to the work, I started making the videos, right? They came about because I was attempting to use another medium to communicate or feeling during my attempts at rest. So a lot of the collection of the videos I made or recorded were made like on holiday, on breaks. You know, the few times you get to go to places that are not as loud, like the city. And then eventually moved on to like a sketchbook practice because I felt like I needed to go back to the rudimentary practice, right? The basics. I had to teach myself how to draw, how to look at things, how to look at color, how to mix paint. So I would look at illustrators and not just artists. I'll look at illustrations, I'll look at people who do sketching and drawing, etc. And then obviously a lot of what influenced my work were things I was reading or things I was looking at as I was recovering. And then generally when it comes to world building, when I make choices about color, it's not a conscious thing, it's just a hyperfixation. So I'm still doing it now, but I was just buying and being constantly attracted to the colors that were in the range from this like very pretty ethereal pink to like dark, more disturbing red. So the sketchbook practice eventually moved on to like making the works digital, and that's what you see on the smaller screens, right? So if you're thinking about narratively, you could say the first room, that's like room 9? Yeah, room 9 is the work I was making before the pause I took, and then to kickstart the new iteration of the practice was the video work, the sketchbook, which became digital, and then starting with the painting. Yeah, right. And then a lot of the work was made in tandem with my residency at Back Factory where I was writing. And the writing was also being formed by this, I think, by this consideration of why I remain in this period, but also how sort of the kind of compromises and the kind of things you have to give up to remain, right? Because the rewards are not so great. It takes a significantly longer time to get even to justice over shore, and that's happening more and more because the arts are becoming increasingly funded and divided. And I think another thing is that the avenues to digitalization are a bit tighter, if that makes any sense. It's more, it seems like there are no barriers, but the barriers are being just not communicated. So when I was writing, I was also like trying to invoke some of that stuff in the painting. So some of the paintings started out as titles of the work before I made the work. And sometimes the painting started before I got the title. The writing hasn't been published yet, but if it was, you'd see some of the phrases that are in the writing in the titles of the painting or in some of the digital videos. I don't know what else to say. Like, you can move on, you guys can ask me questions. I think that's because when the first iteration of this didn't have anything, it was more, it was starting to turn towards like realistic. So I was like, I don't think this works. So I kept coming back and looking at and thinking about what exactly is happening and being able to make work again, being able to, okay, I'm painting again, but it was this exhausting, thing when I was making the work. And even when I made it, it took me a long time to jump from making the other paintings. And most of the paintings I started with the small ones and the older ones compared to the bigger ones. For instance, the second painting I made, the second painting I made was Thoughts and Prayers. I made that actually during the factory residency. And again, it's another one where the title was there before the image was there. I was sketching tiny houses, hills, horizons, etc. But I was also thinking about sort of like some of the solutions that are offered for artists in order to sustain their careers, and they almost seem like thoughts and prayers to you and good luck to you kind of situation. So I was I was thinking about that, and sort of like there's a structure, there's a house standing, but it's not steady, it's not beating, it's not a good house, right? And then this one, I have a chapter. So one of the writing has a subheading, which I borrowed from. I don't know where exactly, but it's called The walls are thick, the door is heavy. And but I don't want to use that title exactly. So I was thinking about how much harder it is for some people to progress, to enter institutions, to get shows, to get galleries, etc. How much more they have to find to control to get it. And then and then also now I remember also the pushback you get about when you demand more for yourself. So, so I made it Know Your Place because it's also another, because in the walls I think the doors are heavy. I speak about stuff like that. I speak about how we are pushed back a lot when we say, okay, this is not official this way, I need to be here, why can I not be here? If you say the doors are open, if you say this is an open space, why is it so hard for me to get there? Kind of thing. Yeah. So, yeah. Ooh. This one, I think, has to do also with, I wouldn't say what I was writing, but sort of the images I'm constantly, I get influenced by, because I was thinking about it after the show. I was like, I read a lot of science fiction, I read a lot of horror, and the books that I keep returning to are Who Fears Death by Neil Carful, the horror series by Octavia Butler, and Stephen King's The Dark Tower series. And I'm very fascinated by horizons and dystopic landscapes and empty roads. And it's also something I was trying to involve when I was making the videos too. Just a lot of being alone, feeling like you're standing alone a lot, right? Yes. Okay. And then this one was more like a direct reference to some of the things that the videos were the sort of, I'll say, maybe weird solutions that I wrote, very capitalist solutions that I wrote, or given for rest, you can nap, or go on holiday, go on break, but it sort of like brings the rinse cycle, repeat that becomes nightmarish because you never really truly rest anyway, if you're doing the same things over and over again. Whereas it's not exactly the resting that's the problem, it's the environment people turn into. And how, sort of like that back to moving myself about, when I come back to being an artist, if I really decide that I'm not going to do anything else, I need to find strategies for myself and not just naps or touching grass that that help me not lose my mind when I'm making this work, kind of thing. Because even, I think for a lot of people who make art, it looks very good. Even this exhibition, it's such a privilege to have it, it's such a great opportunity, but
the long run, sustaining the career is so much harder. There are not enough resources, we don't have structures, all that stuff. So again, I was thinking about those things and writing about those things specifically. Because if you think about the one in the tall grass, the hands up in the air, where else can I go? It just got me thinking, if I don't do this job that I love, that I want to be in, because it's not practical in the long run, it doesn't pay bills as well as more traditional workplace is. Where else can I go? So it's like things like that. Oh, right, that's it.
Can you talk about the hands? There are quite a lot of hands in your paintings.
I don't know yet. I honestly don't know. So there are things that show up a lot. Hands, houses, again, horizons. Because I'm not done in this current section, so I don't know what all these things mean. But I do it a lot even when I'm just playing around or I'm taking videos. I'll just look up a lot and you know what I mean? But I think it's also, I think a lot about surrendering or drowning, all that other stuff.
Calling for help, like
calling for help, yeah. And I think I also said I collect a lot of memes with hand. There's a very funny, it's a meme, it's a drowning meme, where it's 4 panels, where the person calls out for help, it's hand in water calling out for help. The solution that they're often uses is by panel, the hand keeps sinking. So hands show up a lot. They also show up in horror. Like Stephen King's In the Tall Grass has a lot of people just being dragged in the grass or in cornfields. And it's one of my favorite Stephen King books and movies. So they just show up. I haven't figured out what they're doing yet. But that's what I'm thinking about now. Even the tiny houses, I haven't doing it. Yeah. Okay. So moved from narrative from the video works to the painting. Again, I was making more video works using my camera that I bought for more than just taking selfies. When I was trying to rest, when I was trying to recover my practice, and then I moved on again to sketchbooking. And then I think I was speaking to somebody like some of the paintings are translations of smaller sketchbooks, and there's something that's lost when they become larger. And somebody suggested I consider finding a way of getting the sketchbook material onto as full real life works. I don't want to present the sketchbook as a physical book, so I thought about making gifts, turning the work into like these little digital things. And I got help from a friend and an illustrator, Anime Santiago Guenensis, and I just sent her the images I made, and I was like, do whatever you want, like just move something, because I wanted her to resonate with the images. So she chose the images too that would resonate with her, and she helped me animate those. And I really enjoy the kind of choices she made, because I would have made different decisions about what moves. But the whole point was to, I don't know, sort of like evoke some of the feelings I would get when I was resting. Because if we had my sketch, like I was working with prompts a lot. You know, like the little drawing prompts that get you into draw flowers, draw plants, whatever. And I wasn't really happy with that practice. So the more I focused on the things that resonated with me, the images that worked for me, the colors I wanted to work in, the more I worked, the more I sketched, to a point where I was supposed to read like 4 times a week. I do that now even. It just becomes a really good habit of practicing and looking and thinking about the images I wanted to make. And I was also playing with different mediums. So that one, for instance, the last image, not this one. You see, the desert one, you see it? It's actually alcohol marker, not paint. And then that one is acrylic paint, acrylic marker. And and then a lot more of them are watercolor or gouache. Which is another thing I had to better when I went on to work on canvas, is that when I was working on canvas, I really do prefer acrylic, how I translated the colors and the textures there. Yeah. And because I was thinking about how the practice is also something you can't make art only when it's demanded for, like you can't make art only when you have to do an exhibition. Part of the sketchbooking was to keep myself accountable. I opened a very quiet Instagram because the apps will remind you, hey, you've logged in for this much, you've been posting for this much. That means I haven't been in the sketchbook, that means I haven't been drawing, that means I haven't been moving. So, yeah. Let's see if I get this.
I want you to talk about the layout for this room.
This one?
Yeah, and what kind of vision you have for it.
Yeah, so I like people who, when they make work, consider world building, right? So I was attempting to do that with the choices of colors I chose, but also the way I was placing the videos. I didn't want to just put videos for you to look at on one level. So if I play with perspective and height and stuff, it gives you a chance to look at things a little bit differently, I think. And on one hand too, I wanted to evoke a sort of like overwhelming or encompassing atmosphere. I mean, when it's darker, you can really just sink into the material, like outside of anything else. That's what I was trying to do by making these choices. And it also means that when you walk in, you don't immediately attracted to one side or one screen. You're moving head, your eyes up and down. You're looking, in multiple ways. And Bill actually suggested putting some of the work in here, and I thought actually that it kind of speaks to how even the screen, because it's translating the painting in a smaller sketchbook, can also be seen in a similar way. So there's an attempt to work with, yeah. Also get like the smaller projections get you a little bit closer. The screens, smaller screens get you take a step back and really just be surrounded by the work. And then obviously there are things like the wall color to pick up the colors within the material. Yeah. Alright.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I was just the sound on there is a part of
Yes. Yeah.
So to experience it with the sound.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to be encompassing. So when you walk in this room, it's a huge, like you have a slight introduction of the screen there, but it's a huge jarring cut off from like the files they're painting. So I also don't have the sound time. Some videos are quiet, some videos are not. Yeah, so that sometimes, as if you're alone in the room, immediately the sound is playing, you just hear it from. Yeah.
Because we hear some wind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So some of the videos of the water is you can hear it, you can hear the wind, you can hear something in the background, you can hear the sound of the road and sometimes you can't. So with the exception of this phrase, the green one, the word here is what was making before I took my break. Off color is part of the body book, official code by Edward Color, which was part of me for my master's. It addressed things with colorism, xenophobia, gender disparities within colorism, etc. And there's a whole dissertation online, if you don't, let's read that. We'll do that. And then, yeah,
And then the work, this side, is work I made after my master's program ended. So the first one I made, it was I think I would say commission work. One of my supervisors was creating a show at the Ga Festival. And it was so strange because really do black artists present that work, and I really was thinking about how a lot of times institutionally we tend to be visitors, allowed to show up for a bit, do a thing for a bit, and then bye-bye, then everything returns to normal. So it's a phrase that kept repeating, and I made that still in line with the thematics of some of the colors of the colorism project I had. Again, it's also another sign of like my various fixations with color. I'm just glad by the time I made the newer work, it wasn't the yellow phase. So yeah, and then it's the same when it's the same work here. I was working at WAM as a researcher. I was dealing a lot with what they consider the classical African art collection. Yes, and I was thinking about ideas of collecting and ideas of sort of like the things we have to contend with, knowing that how easy we're consumed, not for us, but for the things we make and how little we get from that. So I've been thinking about longer. It's a long habit of collection through legitimate and illegitimate avenues, right? And it's still happening now, and it's about they want the people there. They want black people as panacea, as sort of like virtue signaling solutions to show how progressive they are, but in the end they don't really want it. They don't want us. They want to be able to take things from us and buy things from us. They want to be able to extract the kind of social currency we have. But us being within and remaining within these institutions, being part of the organizing, is not really a thing they see. Yeah. And then, and this is when I started being obsessed with particular colors. I made this print last year. I was again writing at Bag Factory, and during the residency, I was considering Didi Kolowane's archives. I was considering a lot of history in regards to black artists and where it goes, where it remains, because we don't have a lot of institutions that hold that. And a lot of the work of this artist ends up remaining in private collections, European collections, white hands. So if you want, you can just read some of the things I wrote on the wall. But yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, I've run out of steam.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's about this one.
Yeah.
I think out of all of your art, this one resonated with me the most. So I read that on the day of your exhibition, actually, and I was just pondering on what you mean with this particular art piece, right? And it shows me a very forward thinking in your art, obviously, because you think about where your art will end up, and who it will end up with. So my question to you is basically, it ultimately comes down to your livelihood or the livelihood of artists, keeping the lights on at home, or keeping the purification or the purity of your work and what you really meant by creating this and where it will end up, obviously, ultimately. So how do you deal with the balance of keeping your work as is and letting go of it letting go of it for money, basically, to keep your livelihood?
So I think I consider that I'm lucky that I've had, I would say, privileges of choice. So I've never relied on selling work to make money. Because I went through a research program, there are other ways I make work. I write, I organize, I curate, etc., etc. So there's that benefit. But when I was thinking about who we could pick our bones with, there are people at the moment who hold me and allow me to make work and to have a career as precarious as this.
a lot of the time when artists die, because the work is sold, right? Like especially now, the speed between production and sales is so quick, right? And a lot of the time the work is not going to like institutional collections like JAG, for instance. It's going to commercial galleries who are either selling it locally, going directly to someone's home who can afford it, or it's going to an art fair and being sold to Europeans. Again, private collections. Most of it is private collections. I think there are very few, let me not lie because I might be wrong, but I would say, take this with a boulder of salt, there are quite a few artists who do get a chance to sell or to have their work be held in museums. And that museums are not focused on like selling the work, it's about preserving culture and history. So if the studio practices of a lot of artists is not held together, right? It's not something that they are taught to archive or even think about archiving, what happens to it. So I think it's as important for the people who belong to that person to benefit too after their death. Because a lot of the time the people who benefit are not, you know what I mean? I mean, it's even things like, I won't say who, but there are people who hold the rights to somebody's like name, they hold the rights to somebody's like masters kind of thing, right? And that applies also to visual material,
Yes.
right? So, yeah, it's considering all those questions. And then sort of like I wouldn't say the distrust we have, but we with state institutions, because they're so underfunded, we don't feel like they can go to them. They can't hold the material, or we can't trust them to hold the archive. But maybe part of it is that we don't do the trusting, and that's why we constantly turn to the commercial or to the West as places to go to. So even you can say the state is not investing in our own institutions, but are we investing in them too? Right? Do you consider that when you don't want to sell a work, that you might donate a work to a JAG or to whatever? So, but it's also about I was thinking about building my own studio archive, right? Because again, I was like, I make. I don't sell a lot, but I might sell. But what do I hold for myself? Now, what do I hold for maybe if I have progeny, blah, 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 and I hate to use the phrase, but it's that generational wealth thing, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, there are a lot of artists, some, I would say, second generation artists who hold the archives of the people, their parents who used to be artists too. Whereas like, when I walk into, I'd say incidentally walk into somebody doing maybe like a retrospective or like a celebration or symposium for an artist, a lot of the times the people are invited to speak about how much knowledge they had about this person and how they loved how this person worked, etc. But they don't hold the material. Yeah, they don't hold the hundreds and hundreds of works that are produced by because they're there, they're in their daily lives, they're there, but when they die, it doesn't belong to them because of these predatory exploitative deals that are there available for artists. But also this thing of like, sometimes it's not knowing because of ignorance, but it's not knowing because the rules are set up in a way where you don't learn that it's something you have to archive, that it's something you have to build your practice as an institution. Because eventually, if you do gain notoriety, or you have a large body of work decades later, that's a long piece of history, piece of culture that's belonging to the country as well. You should be part of the canon, kind of thing. So when we miss that studio practice for various reasons, yeah.